Be Frankie.
Yeah, I'm striving for greatness, trying to make it out. We're stuck in the matrix. Yeah, I'm striving for greatness, trying to make it out. We're stuck in the matrix. Yeah, I'm striving for greatness, trying to make it out. We're stuck in the matrix. Yeah, I'm striving for greatness, trying to make it out. We're stuck in the matrix.
Yo, what's good? It's your boy B-Dell. If you're new to this channel, hit the like button, hit the share button, hit the subscribe button, hit that notification bell. But today I'm going to be breaking down the infrastructure of the collapse of westernized socialism and how it applies to the geopolitical economic reset. So with that being said, ladies and gentlemen, get those notes out. You already know what time it is. We in in-game season because everything that's taking place right now on the planet is basically interconnected. It's basically energetically connected, right? And I'm going to make it make sense for you because it basically applies to theological context when you go to Genesis 19:24 that states that the Lord rained fire and sulfur on Sodom and Gomorrah, right? Now, remember I was telling you when you look at the chakra points of planet Earth, the root chakra of planet Earth is basically in California where the great majority of all these fires are basically being amplified by, right? So one thing you got to understand about theological context, when it comes to the Bible is basically a Freemasonic playbook that basically works in tandem with the simulation. So nothing prophetic is happening right now. Everything is basically being premeditated by way of the biblical context that's connected to the timeline of events of eschatology that's taking place right now on the planet. So as we get into the presentation, we had all those fires in Palisades, California, all those forest fires, right? All this is being orchestrated by the drones, right? Because remember, I was telling you the drones have a oscillating electrical signals that has an extraction process of laser beam technology. And those laser beam technology, it basically scans the gematria body and it uploads the neurons from the body from technological radiation and it uploads it into a neuromorphic cyber cloud, right? Because the end goal is to create a regime of a totalitarian government that's based on a cybernetic dictatorship, which is a technological civilization that has an ultra-nationalist system that's going to be propagated by Donald Trump and Elon Musk, right? That's what the end game is basically all about because they're basically trying to construct these smart cities that is basically correlated with the sustainable development goals for Agenda for 2030, right? Which is why Dr. Malachi Z. York, Freedom Master Teacher, he said that the end game prophecy is acclimated to the year of 2030, right? So that's why they running out of time right now. So in between time of 2025 to 2030, you're going to see a lot of things happening. Right now, you got Mars in retrograde, you got Pluto in Aquarius, you got the 4 gas giant planets, you got this planetary alignment that's about to be taking place that basically is a representation of a spiritual metamorphosis that's going to be taking place on the planet in the 9-year, right? Because this is the completion of the cycle. This is why everything has to reset, whether if it's an organic reset or if it's an engineered reset. You got 2 different timelines going on. You got to understand that. Now, this is how you know this is basically engineered. Because how in the hell is the particles from the fire going to cross the street and hit these houses that's sitting by the ocean, right? You got to make it make sense. This is where you have to use your mental fortitude and your neurological faculties to practice the disciplinary acts of rationality. Because this is the thing when it comes to conspiracy theories and things of that nature. A person would tell you that the sky is purple if the color blue hurts their feelings. So they're no longer operating from a place of rationality and intelligence because the logic basically took a back seat to the emotionalism aspect of it. So that's why a lot of people don't understand. They're going to take up for things that don't make sense because your emotionalism is basically connected to the material world. And when the material world dematerializes, that's when your emotions that's connected to the material plane is going to put you in a state of, being illogical, basically, right? So, like I said, how in the hell is the fire going to cross the street, right? That's not possible. So that's how you know all this stuff is being engineered by frequency modification, modulation. When you're talking about these drones is creating frequency warfare to engineer a reset, while at the same time you having a planetary reset that's happening organically by Big Mama, which is what we call nature. So it tells you right here the fire hydrants ran dry as Pacific Palisades burned. LA city's officials blame tremendous demand, right? So one thing you got to understand, like I said, you got to use your mental fortitude, right? You got to use your spiritual eye. You got to tap into the energy of intelligence, because like I said, spirituality has nothing to do with wearing head wraps and crystals and all types of shit like that. Spirituality is all about not being tricked, because how in the hell the fire hydrants ran dry when it's right next to the Pacific Ocean? You got all that water, right? So like I said, they playing games with you. This is a form of tricknology and semantics. They playing games with you to see how far they can go with you when it comes to these psychological operations to engineer a great reset that's coming from the deep state shadow government, right? Now, one thing you got to understand about the fires is right by the Getty Museum. Now, the Getty and is right across from the Playboy Mansion. So you had the Palisades fire right by the Getty Museum. The Getty Museum is right by the Playboy Mansion. Diddy's mansion was right by the Playboy Mansion. So that's basically a interstellar tunnel system for trafficking when you're talking about the Playboy Mansion to the Getty Museum and Diddy. So this is all connected. Everything's basically interconnected, because the fall of the deep state shadow government were basically the puppets for a lot of these celebrities to basically propagate a certain agenda that's connected to Babylonian principles. So that's why the Getty Museum, right, it was on fire, basically, right? The Getty Villa has reportedly caught fire in the Pacific Palisades, spreads to 1,200 acres. Now, like I said, you got Casanat's mansion. You got Diddy's mansion right here, where my cursor is at, where you see the red mark right here. All this stuff is basically interconnected, right? So you got to also keep a critical eye of why they push Casanat so much in the media so much. He could be also interconnected with the whole trafficking thing. Allegedly, I don't know. That's just an idea to spark, because they always use one of us to basically keep all of us asleep. Now, the Getty Museum, well, when you look at the top 34 satanic sites in the world, the Getty Museum is in the top 25, right? Exactly where the fires is at. In Palisades, California, right next to the Playboy Mansion, right next to Diddy's mansion, right next to Casanat's mansion. All this stuff is not a coincidence, right? So one thing you got to understand, this is all connected to Babylonian principles, like I said, when you're talking about the Epstein. So now I'm going to show you guys a video that basically correlates to the fires, because we're going to get into how it's basically interconnected with the fog, or the mysterious fog that we've been seeing in our atmosphere, and how it correlates to smart dust particles and nanotechnology. But first, I'm going to show you this video about the fires and everything that basically took place. So what you're looking at right now is an engineered reset that's coming from the deep state shadow government. So now I'm going to I told you I got a new way to show videos now. So hold on for a second. So I'm gonna play this video, and it's basically going to give a intuitive breakdown about everything that's taking place in California when you're talking about the great majority of these fires that's engineered. Now, one thing you got to understand is that there's zero containment, and you have 25,000 of acres of land basically burned. There's no water so they say, and it's right next to the damn Pacific Ocean. So this is basically the engineering process for a Hegelian dialectic principle: problem, reaction, solution. The problem is the forest fires that they created. The reaction is basically to destabilize humanity to where they basically fall back onto the government. So problem, reaction, solution, and the solution is basically a diabolical solution. The solution is going to be the inception point of the smart cities they're going to build up once the great majority of California is basically destroyed.
Call one of the firefighters. What are they called? They're helping so many people. That's your entire life. You don't get that back. The memories are gone. I hope they're alive.
It is like driving through hell itself down here. Literally through hell.
And all of this is what is behind this dire reality for thousands of LA residents, forced to flee their homes, which were torched in a matter of hours. Many houses in this area belong to the rich and famous, but are now in tatters. Californians are used to wildfires in summer. Now, even in winter, they will have to prepare for the worst.
A fire department bulldozer had to push dozens of the abandoned vehicles out of the way.
This is Sunset Boulevard, right in the heart of Pacific Palisades. And all of these cars, including us at one point, were stuck in this gridlock. And in order for firefighters to actually get to the fires, they had to carve a path. And so a bulldozer literally shoved all of these cars to the side. You can see the bumpers ripped off, the scratches along the vehicles here.
A second fire then breaking out about 30 miles away in the hills above Pasadena.
Sounds like a train.
I mean, Jose, the only word that comes to mind truly here, and we're on the Pacific Coast Highway in Malibu, is apocalyptic.
It'll be manageable so we don't have catastrophic losses.
Yeah, this is a very cultural place. It's a cultural compound. It's sort of perched high on that hilltop, very dry. We just saw pictures then of the flames almost reaching that compound. There's high winds predicted again today. What's in store, do you think? Are you ready? And how scary is this situation as a whole, really?
It's scary.
You see at the bottom, it tells you right here, it reaches Getty Museum grounds, right? One of the top 34 satanic sites on the planet, and it's ranked in the top 25. Because like I said, it's connected to Diddy's mansion. It's connected to the Playboy mansion. It's all interconnected, right? Because like I said, we're going through reset. The 9 year, 2025, 2 plus 2 plus 4, 2 plus 2 plus 2 plus 5 equals 9, right? So we in the 9 year, which is finality and completion. The completion of the deep state shadow government that's basically coming from democracy. When you break down the etymology of the word democracy, it means demonic rulership, or through the Coptic language, right? That's connected to the Greeks. That's where the inception of all the Eucharist ceremony, all the blood right rituals and everything when they infiltrated ancient Kemet, all this stuff is connected to everything that's being dismantled right now. That's why it tells you in the Bible that the devil has a 6,000 year dominion on the planet, right? Because like I said, everything that's connected to ancient Babylonian practices, blood rituals, you know, ritualistic sacrifices, incantations, black magic in a form of technological radiation to basically put an encryption over humanity to where they don't receive the light code transmission from the magnetosphere, from the Most High, right? That's what this is all about, right? Because like I said, everything that was connected to ancient Babylon is being destroyed. Like I said, you're going through there's a real planetary reset, and then there's an engineered reset. And the reason I said there's an engineered reset, I think is one of those things where they have to turn in their keys for the system. They're basically turning in their keys. They basically got to reset the system because they have to. So that's what that meeting in Antarctica was basically all about. They had to come to terms with the fact that they got to reset everything in order to give Big Mama her shit back, right? But like I said, they're going to cause chaos before they leave. You got to understand that. So that's why I said you got to be very much prepared for asymmetrical biochemical warfare or any type of hybrid conventional warfare that's going to be taking place all around the planet and on American soil.
You know, these winds are really quite something else right now, and it's also the very low humidity, something that we just really don't see these kinds of levels of kind of risk at this point. But we're prepared.
The fire hitting some of California's most famed areas, home to iconic houses and sites and many celebrities. Chris Pratt posting overnight, please send prayers and strength to those affected. James Woods posting this video of the fires approaching his home. Beloved actor Steve Guttenberg among those stepping up to help his neighbors.
When things like this occur, you really realize how vulnerable you are and how important community is.
And the Getty Villa Museum is confirming that its grounds also caught fire. Fire officials say trees and brush were on fire there and flames approaching structures. The museum says the villa and its art so far has been spared. Now, this is home to tens of thousands of priceless antiques, including Roman, Greek relics dating back to 6500 BC.
Contributor Leslie Marshall.
Relics dating back. Relic far has been spared.
All that she said, ancient Greek and Roman relics. I told you, all this stuff is connected to ancient Babylonian principles, Roman occupational government, you know, everything that's connected to the Greeks, the Hyksos dynasty, right? All this connected to the Amorite and the Canaanite factions of the black nobility. That's what this is all about. That's why the relics in the Getty Villa at the Getty Museum is basically connected to that, right?
Now, this is home to tens of thousands of priceless antiques, including Roman, Greek relics dating back to 6500 BC.
Contributor Leslie Marshall. She shot this video of her Pacific Palisades neighborhood before she and her family were forced to evacuate their home.
I got to tell you, I have never seen winds sustained in the direction that they're going for this amount of time. It's been 24 hours, and still you can see the flags around here. This wind is blowing this way towards the ocean, bringing the fire down the hill. And actually, last night it jumped over PCH, Pacific Coast Highway. We're in the Gladstone's parking lot here, and you know, the Baywatch lifeguard stands were burned, and some of the homes along PCH this way were burned on the water side. So this is a fire of an intensity that we have not seen in a generation in this area.
Have you ever seen anything like this before?
No, this is definitely a first for me. I've been in several fires, and recently the Franklin and the Mountain Fire here in Franklin, mainly here in this area, and I've never seen anything like this. The situation and the winds are extreme, and the conditions continue to worsen for the firefighters out there and also for the community.
We grew up here, so this is amazing.
I've never seen this. It's
just the first for us. I mean, we grew up with fire in the Palisades, but this is not anything like this.
Never thought these streets would burn.
Humidity, dry soils, and high wind make the fire conditions about as bad as it gets. As for climate change, scientists need time to assess exactly what role it played, but broadly speaking, we know it is upping the danger in the US, driving hot and dry conditions that fuel fires like this. And it's extending the fire season, which usually ends around October. Southern California just had a particularly hot summer and almost no rain in what should now be the wet season. This map shows rainfall over the last 60 days compared to the average for that period.
I need gas money, but I don't get paid till next week. What should I do?
The bits in brown around Los Angeles, they've had hardly any rain. And all of this is what is behind this dire reality for thousands of LA residents, forced to flee their homes, which were torched in a matter of hours.
A lot of the devastation that's going on over there. This has been a dramatic fire. Mother Nature has been the star of the show and has made it really challenging for us to fight this fire. Those wind gusts last night that usually lay down after the sun goes down amplified and doubled. I sat out there at the Palisades fire all night and watched those winds whip up to 70, 80, even 100 miles an hour as it scorched that hillside and created 300 to 200 flame lengths. It was dramatic and apocalyptic.
You know, tell me about the resources, the people, the water, because we always hear about preparation and whether or not there is enough water that has been protected for these kinds of firefights.
Yeah, so, there's all different water systems that help take care of us in our residential areas. This area has got water tanks, and they've got 3 million gallon water tanks. And so these are not made for 15-hour firefights that use, everybody's using the water. They're just not designed for that. They're designed for residential use, not wildland firefighting. So they did an incredible job trying to get it back online. So they really worked hard for that. The other thing that kind of went against us is that we weren't able to have our air support to help once the winds got too strong. So a lot of the air support and the water that comes from up above, we relied on the groundwater too. So working with that and really figuring out that balance is where we're at.
So when do you anticipate that you might be able to get firefighters up into the air, because that's such a powerful capability in this kind of situation?
Yeah, that just depends on the sustained gusts. That needs to be below 40 miles an hour, I think, is the tipping point.
So now this is basically the segue into when we get into the fog, the mysterious mist that we've been seeing. So this coincides with asymmetrical, hybrid conventional, radiological, and biological conventional warfare. So now we're finna get back to it, and we're going to get back to the videos once I give a breakdown about that aspect of it. Now, hold on for a second. So, like I said, the sulfuric, in the atmosphere all around California, fire and brimstone coincides with Genesis 19:24, states that the Lord rained fire and sulfur on Sodom and Gomorrah, right? And we all know takes place in California and Hollywood, right? There's a movie that you gotta watch called Starry Eyes. It's basically talking about the satanic culture that's basically propagated by hedonistic practices of ancient Babylon. You gotta watch that movie. It's called Starry Eyes, and it's how it's connected to the movie industry and every other industry that's connected to Hollywood. So now, this is where we get into the apex of everything. When I was telling you, they want to turn the system into a technocrat system that's based on cybernetic dictatorship, where they merge humans with cybernetics, right? Which is artificial intelligence, because the technology, it extracts neurons from the body, right? Now, remember, I was telling you that because, like I said, it's based on asymmetrical, hybrid, conventional, radiological, and biological warfare. That's what the nanotechnology is for, right? Because if the technology contains psychotronic, microscopic, cryogenic nanotechnology that uploads your thoughts on a neuromorphic cyber cloud. That's what the smart cities is basically all about. That's why Donald Trump is working with Elon Musk, right? You have to basically comprehend everything intuitively to understand what's going on. That's what it's all about. Spirituality is all about not being tricked, right? It's all about not being tricked. Hold on, let me get my stuff together. So now when you go to the operational capabilities matrix, it shows you that there's a pattern on the fog and the cloud generation that basically increases concealment. So the concealment in itself basically lowers the pressure, and it basically extracts some moisture, and the moisture creates many different climate transitions within the atmosphere of many different places. Just like we had a snowstorm where I was at, but it was basically activated by the fog, which are basically an influx of smart dust particles, which is basically storm modification. And the storm modification basically manipulates the ecosystem to where the real atmosphere is not working in tandem with with the factions of everything that's encased inside the firmament, right? So you got smart dust materials based on nanotechnology steering themselves with fog, and it basically engineers the emitters of radiation from IR weapons, right? And it basically creates a multitude of a quantum switch that basically contains a mechanism where you have tiny semiconductor nanoparticles extracted from the body and it uploads into a cyber cloud, right? Because when you get to the apex of everything, when you're talking about the final in-game system of what this is all about, there is a AI god, a technology that is being controlled by the archonic forces, who are basically the ruler gods, not the creator gods. The ruler gods who control the simulation by way of the gematria system of the binary code system of the energy extraction matrix. That's what the smart disk particles is basically about, the fog. The fog is basically pulling microscopic waves of energy from your frequency that basically lowers your magnetic field and your nervous system. This is where it basically takes away your divinity and it uploads it into a form of an AI god. Because one thing you got to understand about artificial intelligence doesn't have the ability to create. It can only replicate authentic individuals, those who have souls, who are basically comprised of the 144,000. That's why they are afraid of the cosmic convergence and unity. But like I said, it's prophesized in ancient texts and tablets that unity is going to be the restoration process. So like I said, the sulfuric acid particle is connected to the fog, right? Correlates with, Genesis chapter 19:24. Americans saying mysterious fog with chemical smell is making them sick. This is all connected to biological and biochemical warfare, right? And now when we go to biblical context, when you go to this passage right here, and it talks about how a marvelous sign, the seven angels, the seven plagues, a mysterious smoke, right? And that mysterious smoke is basically the mist, which is basically the fog. And it's talking about creatures coming from the fog, right? So we're going to see an influx of this as you have the four gas giant planets in configuration squaring a circle all from April 6th to the 24th. So you got to pay attention to that too, because that gamma radiation can create a multitude of things in our atmosphere. Now, you got to read this publication by Dr. Malachi Z. York. He's talking about the harvest, which is basically the personification of the rapture. And the rapture is also acclimated to the agenda for 2030. How you talking about there's going to be entities during the time of the rapture that's coming from the fog, a mist. And they're going to come from the mist and they're going to basically have a smorgasbord feast to basically, feed on humanity, which is basically a mass sacrifice. So it says right here, humans are basically sitting ducks for what is about to take place in the universe. This is because you have no idea of what's going on in your world. You are so caught up into the trivial and mundane, unimportant matters and don't even realize that the harvest or the rapture will occur during the time period to come. Time is May 5th, year of 2000, which is in alignment with your major planets, then up to August 12th of 2003, up to June 26th of 2030, if the Anunnaki are blocked from the return of the 144,000, the conflict presently underway for control the Earth and those who are here. Humans are related to both major extraterrestrial forces. Now, Dr. York put out this publication in the early 2000s, right? Not a coincidence. Freedom Master Teacher. So this is also correlated to the mist, right? The mist is basically talking about how there's basically a apocalyptic time within the factors of the movie. And what happens is there's a mist, and that mist is basically the fog. And the great majority of these extraterrestrial entities, they basically sacrifice on humanity, but they didn't touch those who had the mark of the Most High on their forehead, which is basically a tetrahedron energy, being able to balance out energies to where it basically puts a force field around your physiology to where these entities doesn't feed on your anatomy, right? So it's also not a coincidence where I was at in Indiana. This is all connected to the fact that we're gonna have another lockdown, point blank, period. Right? It's going to happen, so you got to prepare for it because it's all connected to the fog. It says right here, hospitals in parts of California, Illinois, Indiana, New Jersey have also brought back rules to staff visitors. Official New York City urging people to wear face masks because, like I said, we're on the brink of another shutdown, right? So now we're going to go back to the video because, like I said, the fog is basically the epitome of smart dust particles, and those smart dust particles is being made to manipulate your physiology to where you don't receive light code lockdown in solar cycle 25 because the technology from the smart dust particles and the nanotechnology, it basically manipulates your DNA structure, right? To where your DNA structure is not able to revitalize itself from the sun heat gene prominences that's being extracted from the corona borealis. We're going to get into that as we get through the presentation. Now, now we're going to get back to the video at hand. Okay. And we're going to go up here to where it's talking about the fog. Now,
the sustained gusts that needs to be below 40 miles an hour. I think is the tipping point.
So a lot of people are reporting that after the fog that we've been experiencing, there are strange things growing from the ground, just like this. Check this out.
This hair.
That's hair.
Out of the cat poo on the ground. It's like that long coming out of the cat poo.
Did you hear someone coughing from breathing that
Never
in?
seen anything like that. And then I've seen people on TikTok say they've seen it since the fog yesterday.
This is what I found today. This hair is growing out of.
So how you know this is also not connected to the severe intravenous epidemic respiratory syndrome that creates a fungus, and the fungus has the ability to manipulate your cerebral cortex, right? That's something to pay attention to because the introvirus is basically an emulation of the hexahedron that sits on the top of cube of Saturn because whatever type of draconian juice that they have to basically combat that energy is basically going to upload your thoughts into the binary code system of the supercomputer that sits on the dark side of the moon, right? Because everything that's connected to their draconian juice, everything that's connected to their simulation is a form of a soul trap.
So what do you guys think that this is? A lot of you guys have been commenting in my previous videos, and that's what's up. I can't say it, but you can say it. What do you think it is?
So you got to look at it. You know, like I said, it tells you in the caption. I'm no conspiracy theorist, but I'm pretty sure fog is not supposed to look like it. Those are all smart dust particles. Now, before we get back to that, right, we got to go back because all this stuff, like I said, it's all based on globalism, right? Because when you look at this publication right here, it's basically talking about the Club of Rome, who is basically comprised of the Committee of 300 and the Bilderberg Group. This group was organized in 1968 by the Montauk Group for the purpose of accelerating the plans to have a new world order in place by the year of 2000. In 1976, the United States Association of the Club of Rome was formed for the purpose of shutting down the United States economy gradually. And they're doing that in increments. Like I said, that's why everything's connected to the Sustainable Development Goals for the Agenda for 2030. So that's why right here it shows you America connected to Canada and Canada connected to Greenland. So that's why Donald Trump is basically trying to comprise Canada and Greenland into the United States, right? Because it's based on globalization, and they can only do that with Donald Trump because he is the one that's going to be the catalyst of chaos to where they get the order, right? So that's why Donald Trump, he tweeted this and said, "Oh, Canada," because everything is going to be a form of globalization when you have enough, affliction on the planet, because their concept of unity is a form of control, right? It's a form of control to create a dystopia that's based on a police state, and the police state is going to be connected to a form of artificial intelligence, a technocrat system that's going to be controlled by Elon Musk and Donald Trump. So that's why Trump ramps up threats to gain control of Greenland and Panama Canal, right? It's all based on globalization. President-elect Donald Trump says he plans to change the Gulf of Mexico to Gulf of America. They putting it right in your face. This is what it's about. Globalization is all about the New World Order system. They're trying to complete certain things before the year of 2030. That's why you got to understand that 2025 is the year of completion, the completion of the corporate system that was controlled by the three city-states, the Vatican, City of London, and Washington, D.C. Since those three energies are basically eradicated because it's connected to the Piscean age of darkness of Aries and Taurus that was connected to the lunar cycle, now we're in the sun cycle, and they're trying to combat the energy of light cold lockdown with technological radiation that's coming from the old energy of the Piscean age of darkness. So like I said, you can't bring lunar energy into a sun cycle. It's not going to work, right? So one thing you got to understand about everything, and like I said, it's all globalization. So now we're going to go back to the video, right? We're going to go back to the video. Let me see. Now we're going to go back to the video. So when you look at the video, it's going to show you Donald Trump basically politicking with Obama at Jimmy Carter's funeral, right? It's one big club, right? It's one big club. They all working together. Because if Donald Trump was really draining the swamp, why are you politicking with the deep state shadow government, right? It's right in your face.
Down, yo. I told.
So we're going to get back to that right there later. But like I said, it's all in your face. But like I said, people are not tapped in. They're not, very much tapped in to what's taking place spiritually. They're not tapped into the information. They think everything is a conspiracy. So that's why I said Donald Trump, when you break down the esoteric aspects of MAGA that's connected to ancient Kemetic spirituality, MAGA translates to set sun. And MAGA, when you break down the etymology, he is a demonic entity in ancient Kemetic mythology, right? So that's why I said you got to be very meticulous of what you propagate. Just because Donald Trump is draining the swamp doesn't mean that he's not a part of the swamp, right? He is basically your personification of a blueprint for a savior of a system to bring in the New World Order system. Donald Trump is not your savior. He is the fictitious savior that's connected to MAGA, who is a demonic entity who is set sun in ancient Kemetic spirituality, right? You got to understand that. So what you see taking place on the planet right now on the physical level is basically spiritual. So that's why I said MAGA is a demonic entity in ancient Egyptian mythology and Kemetic spirituality. MAGA, the doctrine, the only idea that will win in the future, right? Because the future is technological technocrat systems, right? So it tells you right here in the insider paper, breaking, President-elect Trump is expected to announce a foreign investment into the United States economy. And Mar-a-Lago remarks the investment will be $20 billion to build a new data centers across the country, because that coincides with DARPA, which is the Defense Advanced Research Project Agency that works in tandem with M12, which is basically the comprised of the Majestic 12. The investor is a billionaire, Hassan, whatever that word is, and chairman of DAM Properties and CNBC. Now, this is also correlated with Donald Trump warns the United States may be forced into a economic depression as 36 trillion debt crisis spirals out of control. Because like I said, Donald Trump is the catalyst of chaos to where they're going to implement order. And the order is going to be technocrat systems that basically control humanity under a surveillance of a police state, which is basically an ultra-nationalist government, right? That's what this is all about. Because remember, I was telling you the last time in the year of the snake, which was in 1929, that's when the stock market crashed. Now we're in the year of the snake, the year of the serpent, the cosmic serpent. That's why everything is starting to reset. That's why I was saying it's basically the geopolitical economic reset that's taking place on American soil. Donald Trump will release all secret alien and UFO files. I'm convinced of it, right? That's coming from the United States Congressman Tim Burchett. Has claimed that he's spoken to incoming United States President Donald Trump will speak about aliens and UFOs, which is basically full disclosure. So you're going to have an influx of chaos. You got Project Bluebeam, you got UFOs, extraterrestrials, you got fires, you got all these celestial events that's basically happening. You got the fog, you got a multitude of afflictions that's basically keeping you acclimated to the distraction at hand. So like I said, that's going to cause chaos to where they get order. Because one thing you got to understand about Donald Trump, he's a white hat, meaning that he's basically a Scottish Rite, 32nd degree Scottish Rite Freemason. He works with both sides. So most of the rituals of everything that you've seen take place is basically the rituals for the Super Bowl, which is why you had that event that took place in New Orleans when you're talking about 10 unalived and 30 hurt. Because even though the numbers are basically inflated once they found out more people were basically unalived and hurt, but you got to be very critical of the numbers that they put in your face, because these numbers are basically sigilsisms that's connected to a form of an incantation that they're basically trying to propagate. Because when you look at the science of the number 1030, it's basically talking about spiritual metamorphosis and major changes, meaning that major turmoil, your world can basically change, right? So that's why you must not be in fear. So you got a multitude of things that's taking place. You got, the Cornea Borealis star system is creating a supernova event sometime around September 2025. Then you got a once-in-a-lifetime nova event expected to hit soon. Then you got the 4 planets, 4 gas giants aligned in the sky every night of January, right? Then you got Solar Cycle 25. This is being projected by, a publication that was created by NASA. Strong solar flare erupts from the sun. It's going to happen even more, which is why you're having so many interface transitions and glitches within the matrix. I'm going to show you some parts of the video that shows you the glitch in the matrix. And it's all happening because one thing you got to understand about the sun, when the sun is at solar maximum, it has the ability to manipulate everything within the constructs of humanity. And it can manipulate the timeline of events that's correlated to humanity. So I'm going to show you this video for a second. So now, when we go here, so this video is going to display an airplane just sitting in midair, because like I said, the interface transition, the glitch that's connected to liquid crystal polarization is what creates the holographic projection that basically manipulates the subatomic particles. Because when you have the subatomic particles being manipulated by the circular structures of plasmoids or coronal mass ejections, it has the ability to cause a glitch in the matrix of what you're about to see right now on my screen.
Down, yo. I told you, look, y'all thinking I'm playing. We in the matrix, y'all. Look, it's staying in one spot. It's staying in one spot. I'm not bugging. That's united. It's still in one spot. Look, and it's low. Ma. So I'm bugging right now.
So you got all these glitches. Look at the lights flickering on and off. You got the mothership over the firmament, right? And the mothership in itself is creating an influx of gamma radiation that works in tandem with the star Polaris. These energies is coming in, is creating an influx of glitches within our reality, right? So that's why I said it's imperative to understand what's going on. So we'll go back to sharing to the presentation. So that's why I said there's so many glitches taking place because you got these solar flares. It's solar cycle 25. 2 plus 5 equals 7. Now, when you understand Hinduism, Shiva, when you break down the etymology of the word, it means 7 because Krishna is the outer manifestation of Shiva, right? Krishna is equated to Christ. Christ is basically the Christ consciousness, which is right knowledge. Then you're talking about this right here. Heads up, the brightest comet of the year may light up the sky next week. All these celestial events. And then it has a green energy around it, which is a form of gamma radiation, right? Ether. NASA confirmed source of streaking fireball in Gulf. So you got all these celestial events. Now, for those coming in, I'm going to give a brief synopsis about everything that's taking place, right? But like I said, the fires that you see in California is basically interconnected to the fog that you see in all around the planet because it contains smart dust particles. Smart dust particles is connected to a form of hybrid, asymmetrical, conventional, radiological, and biological warfare, right? So it all correlates to Genesis chapter 19:24 because one thing you got to understand about the Bible, it's a Freemasonic playbook that works in tandem with the orchestration of events that's taking place right now on American soil because we're living in the seven-year tribulation period, right? All this stuff, the fires at Gettysburg Museum, the Palisades fire is connected to the Playboy Mansion, and the Playboy Mansion has tunnels to Diddy's mansion. So all this stuff, and you got the Getty Villa, right? It's basically the top 34 satanic sites on the planet, right? And it's basically sits at top 25, right? It's all about the smart cities that they're going to try to amplify in LA, and it coincides with the operational capabilities matrix system that contains smart dust particles, and the smart dust particles has the ability to create a semiconductor of nanoparticles that extracts neurons from the body. Right? So it's all correlated to the fog. It's all talking about globalization, a totalitarian government. So with that being said, ladies and gentlemen, like I said, many of us already know what time it is on the planet. That's why we have to galvanize our resources and come together in a form of unity to basically create this cosmic convergence to basically combat the afflictions and the incantations that's being propagated by the deep state shadow government. Now, one thing you also got to understand is that the way they do their magic, we have to start doing our magic. We have to do our shadow work because the more we come to terms with ourselves and the more that we tap into self-realization, that's when you're going to activate your gifts. Because you're never going to activate your gifts of authenticity if you're basically hiding from your shadow self. So that's why you have to get your ass in alignment. So with that being said, ladies and gentlemen, thanks for watching this video. End of transmission.